That's a nice flexible card there. And then some of the stuff ported over from the usual Ocular Shell. So Prophetic Memory, Sheltered by Ghosts as a way to suit up something, make a big life-linking attacker. One of the best ways to actually swing a match against something like Mono Red or Prowess.
Yeah, this is actually looks really interesting to me. So, I mean, kind of highlighting the huge differences between Jeskai Oculus. Obviously, a lot of the creatures are different, but like you mentioned, some of them are filling similar-ish roles. So, pest control in the main, that's a huge difference against these Izzet decks, right? I mean, just having a main deck Wrath that cleans up everything but Slick Shot's super nice. And then having some, more non-conditional removal in the form of what it kills, so in the form of Bitter Triumph, that also enables the Oculus stuff, I think that's pretty interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out. The sideboard has, a couple more removal spells and some Kaitos, so that's pretty exciting. I'm really interested to see. But Dom, like I mentioned, before the round started, this is the part that I'm super interested in. I can totally believe that Esper Oculus, is a bit better, if not much better, against Izzet Cutter. Excuse me, Esper Oculus, misspoke there. But how does it do versus the other decks? Because you can't just bring a deck that only beats the best deck, right? The best deck now ever, I think, representation-wise, is Izzet Cutter from the last RC at about 36% on day one. That means, though, still, 2/3 of the room are not on that deck. You have to be able to beat these other decks.
Yeah, and we've all had that experience of you target the best deck and then you play against literally everything else, and hopefully you didn't metagame too far and metagame yourself out of the tournament as a result. So yeah, I mean, the main question on everyone's minds is, if you're trying to do something different, how does it line up against Paris? That's the first litmus test. But how do you do against defending standard RC champion, basically playing the same deck that they won with last year? And that's the exact opposite end of the spectrum, right? Is this like classic control deck. So in this matchup, the black cards, in the main deck, it's which removal do you want mostly? And that's mostly going to be a wash, I think, against control. But in the sideboard, that's where you get these really high impact cards like Duress, classic control killer dating back 30 years at this point. Kaito, dating back about 8 months, but still very good against control.
Feels like 30 years though when you play against it, I'll tell you that.
It does, but that's a card, right? Which, I mean, even going back 6 months, that felt like the defining card in Standard. And there were a lot of these kind of bigger, beefier threats, which you just couldn't play anymore because they line up so poorly against Kaido. And now that card is on the fringes, just begging for attention, if you like. It has its moments, certainly, but that's the kind of card which, if everyone is attacking you with hasty 1-drops and 2-drops, like that card just inherently is going to get a lot worse.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, like you just mentioned there. Like, it just little context changes change everything, right? Like a couple months ago, everyone's playing Kaido and Curiosity. It's like sort of the deck du jour. And then we figure out things like Esper Pixie, and that changes it. And then we didn't really talk about Dom. Esper Pixie, I don't believe, was on, any of the most played decks here. The deck has sort of just fallen off because of literally Corey Steelcutter and friends, right? Like, the adding of one card that revitalizes one archetype totally changes the format. And, that was a deck that players were begging for bans going into this format, I think Beanstalk and Monstrous Rage were the number 1, number 2, but I think a close third for a lot of players was sort of like This Town / Hopeless Nightmare, even if maybe it just came from a fun perspective, but the deck's just been totally pushed out of the metagame.
Yeah, if you go back to the last Standard PT, just a few months ago at PT Aetherdrift, you had these 3 poles, if you like. You had Half-Eye Hero, Manifold Mouse over here, Up the Beanstalk, and Overlords over here, and then the This Town stuff over here. And none of those have really maintained their dominance, right? They're all sticking out to some extent. 10% mono red, and Domain is here, and the Pixie stuff is hanging on for dear life. But this one seemingly innocuous card in the new set it's not any of the 3-color clan cards, right? It's no Abzan or Jeskai, anything like that. It's just Corey Steelcutter just transforming the format overnight by itself.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because like, it's kind of what you expect from a quote-unquote healthy metagame, right? Like, Standard is the format where this sort of thing does happen, right? It's all been one deck causing it to move instead of 2 or 3 decks from a new set. So it's super interesting where it's kind of like, yeah, the churn is normal. It's just, we're having this outlier at the top. But it looks like players are mulliganing up here, and the action is about to begin.
Yeah, depending on your perspective, could be reassuring or terrifying that the things we were complaining about a few months ago aren't even on the radar now, and maybe 4 months from now, Corey Stillcutter will seem tame and innocent, but by comparison. But it certainly is going to be the talk of the town this weekend.
Yeah, concealed courtyard and a passing of the turn. Planes pass the turn back. Beautiful APAC one there. Adhikar Ways pass back. Don, we'll have to see if Final Fantasy brings us anything. That will definitely be something we can talk about during our mini rounds of coverage here to get this Decoin weekend. Blue White Verge pass back. The way Magic was intended to be played here. Adhikar Ways number 3. Looks like it's action time. Steam Core Scholar. Ooh, no more lies, Dom.
Yes, and notably, no more lies. Mana Leak and all but name, but exiling very crucial against Oculus. Not just trinket text, because that means the helping hand that you see in Hugo's hand can't actually bring that back. And in general, just any graveyard synergy, that is a very meaningful upgrade.
Yep, and we're seeing an island and a passing of the turn, and Liam just with a hand full of answers. His main deck authority of the consoles has been drawn, but I think we're out of lands.
Yeah, you can see the kind of lengths that players are going to try and get an edge in game one against Issaparas. So main deck Authority of the consoles, main deck High Noon also a very popular choice. But turns out if you zig while others are zagging, Authority and High Noon not so great against stuff like Esper Oculus and the other category at large.
All right, so we see Hugo go for a prosthetic memory. It gets negated, has the third land, but doesn't have a punish follow-up play. Has Oculus stranded in hand with 2 kill spells and a helping hand.
Yeah, and part of the appeal of the Oculus deck is you have these looting effects. So usually it's stuff like Fear of Missing Out, Terza, that kind of thing. In Esper, you're looking at the Demir options like Evangel Synthesis. But if you don't have those, you can still have these quite disjointed draws with you flooding out a little bit. You see Hugo making his 6th land drop there. Not going to have use of all of that. And then these dead removal spells that maybe this Team Call Scholar, if it resolves, can help to cast those in for something more relevant.
All right, and it does resolve. We're going to draw 2, discard 2. I want to give a small shot there to Liam. I think it's very easy for a lot of players to maybe want to slam their base on that last turn. You're down mana, get a treasure, get a clock going. Would have been very punished and not gotten the value you kind of want out of that card. These small little things are what make and break champions, and that's why we're following Liam from the champ last time. Oculus very quickly discarded. The question is, will cut down go? We're going to discard a land instead. Hold on to that in case something happens. And now we have a helping hand lined up here. Maybe wanting to fire it off now.
Yeah, interesting there with Simcore Scholar. You discard 2 unless you discard an instant or sorcery or a flyer. Hugo did discard a flyer, so could have kept that Dark Six Short around. As we said, though, you don't need the 6th land drop. Probably don't need the 7th one either, except as fodder for yet another discard spell maybe down the line.
Yeah, I think it was intentional because Hugo was tanking there, and Hugo has another Oculus in hand. So I think the idea is, like you're saying, I don't need this land, and this sort of counts as the land I need it to be, right? In case this Oculus goes away, as Meringue River Region gets cast.
With these decks, you often get into these situations where if you could just discard a card for no effect at all, you would happily slam that button. And so, Hugo, I think playing it safe here, you're not going for the helping hand into a possible second No More Lies, just trying to bide his time for a big turn. But that gives Liam the breathing room to go for that coil and catch, the Omen mode of Meringue River Regent, stocking up his hand with more and more get lost, it seems. He has no idea where he is or what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think he's actually telling that to Hugo. He's like, hey, this is my seat when the future match area get lost,
Okay. Liam's a very friendly face, but metaphorically, he is.
Well, that's as aggressive as a
message.
Canadian gets. I'm sorry, I'm used to covering Americans. That's my bad. I'm used to hipping and hollering over here, as it looks like Beza is going to come down, and I'm not sure if it's actually triggering anything except the life. It looks to be just life.
Always funny with Painlands, dinging yourself sometimes turns in advance so that when the Beza eventually comes down, you are strategically at a lower life total so you can then buff yourself back up again. But yeah, not a max value Beza, but still a perfectly serviceable one. Hugo gonna try and make inroads against that life total, cracking it for 2 with the Stingbolt Scholar, and now we will see the helping hand going for the Oculus.
Yeah.
Liam will gain 1 from Authority, and Uh, Only on 1 mana untap, so we will pass to Liam's upkeep. Hugo will get a chance to manifest once, but I think that's going to be the extent of it here.
I think so too. We did see it was double prof the deck memory. So that means Hugo is out of those as soon as the manifest draw is gone. Liam will know due to the open decklist nature. Trying to see if Liam has any bouncing besides Meringue River region. No Aetherize or anything too fancy here. Beza attacks for 4. And it looks like Day of Judgment coming down. And Jig's up now too. All the profs are in the graveyard.
Yeah, so the owner's really on Hugo here to present some kind of meaningful threat on this turn. And the Oculus, all of that stuff getting swept away means he can hardcast this follow-up Oculus. Devour the rest of that graveyard there. And can leave a card behind, so the second Oculus for another potential helping hand.
And get lost here on the Oculus. Looks like we went to maybe pop one of the maps potentially. No, it looks like we were actually passing the turn. So we have 2 maps getting handed there. My bad. Got a little lost in the sauce for a second here as a Verge is drawn from the turn. And Liam's hand is all, I think, answering spells, lands, and stock up. And that's kind of all Liam wants.
Yeah, and once you resolve a stock up, your hand is going to be really whatever you want it to be. Sometimes it's just a second stock up, that will find you the thing that really puts the game away.
Yep. As it looks like we're looking at 2 Elspeth Mites, a land, 3 steps ahead, and No More Lies, and we take No More Lies 3 steps ahead. Do a little rearranging in case we hit the bottom 3 cards of our deck. Hate to lose because of that. I hate to see it in general. Better than random, though. I'd hate to see the players shuffle the 3 cards. Ooh, Evangelist come down.
Yet another life point gained off the Authority, which again, not the matchup is for, but those single points here and there, those do add up over time, and Liam is still above his starting life total pretty comfortably here.
Yeah. We always kind of talk about in Magic, right? How like 1 life often is not a make or break thing, but gaining 1 life over and over and over again, and also being a main deck card that kind of crushes certain matchups is super big. As we go for the helping hand, it gets negated, but we find another one on top of the map, and now it's where we get our counter. I'm curious, do we pop the map or do we hold it for later? Looks like we're holding it.
Yeah, I think at this point, Hugo, he he just wants more action, and he can always crack the map. He has more than enough mana spare to crack the map later on. So if you draw the card you want, and then you get to map either a land into your hand, or you get to map away a bad spell, then that's going to be a better use for it. But Liam tapping a lot of mana here for
Jace the Perfected Mind.
Okay. So that's going to keep the Evangel in check. Or no, actually, it's going to mill the helping hand, which Liam, you was there from the map, so he had a premonition of things to come and found the perfect solution.
Yeah, and now we're gonna Bitter Triumph targeting Jace. Looks like we're gonna keep the cut down in hand and to spend 3 life, but No More Lies is gonna get that. That is gonna exile it as well. A little anti-synergy there with Jace's minus, but Liam will power through it in these trying times.
Yeah, Liam's got to be happy as well to find a nice use for that No More Lies in a situation where Hugo is falling out pretty badly. But hey, it seems like there was still a helping hand on top there, Mason.
Yeah, the last helping hand wants Hugo to battle it out, as Liam has had the 4th get lost, but here comes helping hand, and you see Liam kind of nod his head like, all right, fair's fair. Okay, yeah, I'm doing a little graveyard check, making sure our Jace will not be drawing 3 cards in a second. Luckily, Oculus played a little defense in that regard. And we're going to map on the Oculus, hit a land, draw that one. Probably going to map again. Try and make sure we hit something like another Oculus or some other creature. Spyglass Siren. Interesting moment on if you want to keep this one, even if it's just for a counter or go for another activation. Looks like we're just gonna let it go. And then we're gonna pop the last map here and find Shieldred the Apocalypse. Thinks we want that one.
That now that's the kind of card that can win a game by itself. And we mentioned Liam's giant pile of get loss. Hugo has worked through most of those at the moment. So if he can find a way to stick the shielded, I mean that's a card that can run away with things on its own.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if Liam can figure it out as Adakar Waste goes face down. And there's something underneath this manifest as we're going to activate Jace, milling 3, pest control 2 lands. Cards Hugo's really excited to see hit the graveyard. We need to hit some gas. Oh, split up.
So that is going to destroy all tapped creatures, which they're all tapped thanks to Authority of the Console. So a nice little synergy built into the deck there. Finding another way to get more leverage from a card that, again, is not intended for this matchup, but still doing phenomenal work here. And now Meringue River Regent going to bounce the Jace to reset that, and also present a giant beefy attacker that can end the game fast in its own right.
Yeah, and this is one of the, I think, underappreciated parts of Meringue is it's your draw engine right in the mid game. It takes over the game in the late, but also just like the bouncing sometimes your own things like this Jace is actually so huge, especially in matchups where Jace is like trying to mill someone out, right? Like against Overlords, this gives you a really good way just to sort of, mill somebody out if you've run them out of resources. As we're going to discard Pest Control and then hard cast an Oculus.
Yeah, it sounds kind of silly too, but 6/7 flight is really, really big. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Hugo is jumping through these hoops to hard cast this Oculus, and it's going to look puny compared to this 6/7 on the other side of the board.
Yeah. And Liam's taking a look here. A lot of the deck has been seen. So Liam, with this being open deck list, is just thinking, okay, what can actually kill my Meringue? Do I need to use a 3 steps ahead as a counterspell, or can I make like a copy, bounce this, bounce these threats, and try and close the game out? And Winter Night Stories hits the graveyard. That's some little extra value as a Steam Core Scholar goes face down.
Yeah, 3 steps ahead as well. You mentioned the copy mode. This is one of the more versatile and impressive counter spells that we've seen in a long time.
Mhm.
But that dream that you get to chase of, can I do all of that and also copy something big? This is a really nice thing to copy if the game's going that long.
It definitely is. As looks like Stock Up found a land in the form of Fountain Port that Liam's very excited to grab, and then another spell. Didn't catch a look at it there, but looks like it was another Stock Up. That's why just decided to run it back, as it were. And now we have to do some combat math, but even if you do it a little wrong, Liam is at 29, so we can afford to take a couple hits. As here's 3 steps ahead, just getting main phase cast.
Yeah, so going to make a copy of Meringue and has the option to pay some more mana and get the extra catalog mode too. Looks like just going to make a copy of Meringue, bouncing, I would assume, the Oculus, and you don't really want to bounce the Scholar, but then depending on what the manifest is, you maybe don't want to give Hugo access to that either. So just going to bounce the 2 cards that we know about, declaring, yeah, I know what those are. I know I can beat those, so have at it.
Yeah, and of note too here, Liam could have played Jace and just ticked up on the Manifest Dread, but decides against it. Decides much better to hold on to that card for maximum value here, as Sheltered by Ghost is going to come down.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat the token meringue. So even if this manifest all the Shelter by Ghost is dealt with now, that token meringue is gone permanently. Still need to deal with the original somehow. But Hugo, scrapping to stay in it here.
Yeah, and now interesting spot here. Obviously, Important Oculus is the card we think of. It's the namesake, but you saw Hugo taking a second to think because Steam Core Scholar would let us dig a little and potentially find an answer to the meringue. But we're going to start with Oculus here. It is going to enter tapped.
Yeah, which again, that ends up being so relevant, where something can't be an immediate blocker for the meringue, can't harmonize your Winter Night Stories or something like that. Like, it seems like all of these things are relatively minor, but they do add up over the course of even just a single game here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it makes me wonder if you're supposed to play Steam Core, right? So that it can chump on the next turn, but Split Up's gonna be massive here, killing everything. And then Meringue comes in for 6, down to 4 for Hugo, and we need to draw one of those kill spells right now as Stock Up gets slammed from Liam. Liam knows this game is his to win, just needs to make sure we don't lose it. something silly here, and we found just some lands and a meringue. Lockdown hiding in the bunch, but not really what the doctor's wanting right now.
Yeah, but when the game goes this long and your opponent draws and then taps three and casts stock up, your heart just plummets because that's bad by itself. But almost the worst thing that can happen is after that, well, they just cast the second stock up that they found, and now their hand is just flush with anything they could possibly ask for. And yeah, Liam has seen most of his deck at this point, but
Shieldred was
Hugo's
drawn.
yeah. And so Liam, like, from Hugo's side, after what happened last turn, you can't be optimistic that this is gonna, stick and go the distance and start this amazing comeback. But it's not happening any other way. So,
if we had played one of these lands earlier, we could have gone Shieldred into Steam Core, gained up to 8, and then cut down this lethal creature land. Now, I guess the fish would also be lethal, but all right, we do have the Steam Core, so we can try and find something like Bitter Triumph. But just Spell Pierce was found, and I don't think Hugo has any real plays that can win here. Play Shieldred for the love of the game.
yeah, Liam looking like the aggro deck here. This breed of blue-eye control very good at turning the corner with stuff like Meringue or Boonbringer Valkyrie, an interesting feature of Liam's list too, almost harkening back to the Baneslayer Angel days of blue-eye control. Makes a lot of sense in a format full of mono red and Prowess, and it's actually pretty hard for a lot of decks to deal with really any big flyer on a permanent basis.
Yeah, and even like, the Overlord matchup, right? Like you do kind of have to kill them once you run them low on cards. Um, and taking a look at these sideboards here, we're gonna start with Liam's sideboard. We have 2 Jace, 1 Beza, 1 Kotzel, 1 Kotzel Flinker, 2 Overlord of the Mistmords, 2 Change the Equation, 1 Destroy Evil, 1 Elspeth Smythe, 2 Stone Brain, 2 High Noon, and a Rest in Peace Dom. Is there anything you like here?
Yeah, so I think the cards that you would expect, right? So Rest in Peace, breaking up graveyard synergies. You could fiddle around with your removal suite, and even though Authority did great work that game, probably is going to hit the bench. I would imagine for games 2 and 3. But a basic formula is going to remain in place. And then over on Hugo's side, we have these classic anti-control cards, right? Duress, Kaito, and then No More Lies, Negate. So I think Hugo gets to overhaul his deck, replace some of these cut downs that were stinking up the joint for so long there in game 1. So I think Hugo probably improves more on balance in the post-board games, but he's got to win both of them to get off to a good start here.
Yeah, and this is, like you mentioned before, one of the nice things about being in the black and the sideboard is you get these cards like Duress that can be super impactful. So I'm really excited to see sort of if Hugo can sculpt the deck in a way, take this down. In theory, Hugo knows about this deck, right? This isn't some other versus other category, right? It's not like Smuggler Surprise. We have to figuring it all out on the fly. This is a known deck, like you mentioned, got second, and it's an archetype you just kind of know will be represented in some amount, right, Dom? Like when you go to a tournament, some percentage of the field are going to play control regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, there are some who they'll play it when they think it's good, it's in their range, but they'll ditch it if they think the time isn't right. And then there are the people who they're fighting the good fight every single tournament, regardless of how uphill that struggle truly is. And it seems like, based on recent results, this is actually a pretty decent time to be a control mage if that's your jam, and we know it certainly is Liam's. So this is a known quantity, certainly, and one of the questions coming out of last week is, are people going to jump off the Jeskai bandwagon and get onto this one? Or are we going to see this kind of split, right? Where some people are going to stick with Jeskai and then others will dive deeper into Blue-White. It seems like based on that metagame breakdown, mostly people have stuck with Jeskai, and might be interesting at the end of the weekend to compare, how did the 3-color versus 2-color control decks fare in the end?
Definitely. I also wanted to check, this is, like we said, the American RC, I believe was last weekend, right? I'm not totally crazy. Life's a bit of a blur these days. I wonder how many people just couldn't find the cards too, right? Like I definitely know I've been in that spot before where it's like, well, actually for a spot like Atlanta, it was like, I want to play Esper Pixie. I just can't get the stuff,
I've seen a lot of Canadians frantically asking for cards in the past week or so. no confirmed cases yet of that actually determining someone's deck
Yeah.
choice, but I'm sure ask around enough, you're gonna find some.
It's always funny too, Dom, when it's like like one friend goes like I'm looking for cutter cards, and the other goes I'm looking for Jeskai control cards, right? And they both think it's the best deck, and it's like, well, somebody's right, It's like I've got the cards. Here you go, friend. I'm gonna play cutter. Let me get those cards from you.
Or anyway, sometimes it's well, I do have the Demir mid-range cards you're looking for. I don't know if it's responsible as a friend to lend them to you, but sure. I
Yeah,
mean, I can't make your decisions for you.
yeah, exactly. Here's enduring curiosity. And it looks like we got a little bit of a peek into how Hugo sideboarded a ton of removal spells out, but also Oculus and Helping Hand for the most part leaving the deck, cutting 2 Oculus and what seemed to be 3 Helping Hand. Putting back in some, look like a Pest Control and a couple Destroy Evils I maybe missaw there though.
Yeah, Detroit Evil, a nice hedge against both hate cards of sorts like Rest in Peace, and also some of the bigger creatures that Liam Sec has, Meringue River Region, and Boombringer Valkyrie, and stuff like Beza. There's actually a lot of stuff that does demand removal over the course of a longer game. So you want some removal in the deck, but you don't want certainly don't want cut down, but don't want too much of the cards that only do that. So Destroy Evil, nice hedge there, and then also really nice against the more popular Oculus variants, and then also stuff like Demons, or certainly against Domain, that's going to be one of your best cards. So that's one of the big draws to white in the format, just whatever kind of strategy you're playing right now.
Mm-hmm. True. It's 27 minutes on the clock. Plenty of time to play game 2 and 3 here. That is one of the things you have to always be thinking about when you're playing these control decks, is sort of, getting it done in a timely way. Obviously, I think both players here have been playing at a good pace. Just had a long game 1.
Yeah, you don't play a control deck for hopefully 17, 18 rounds if you don't like the long games. If you want to catch up with your friends, go to the concession stand, have a nice break between rounds. There's lots of decks in this format that are better suited to your taste there.
Oh, the first gum of the day has been popped. Double gum. Liam serious. Wow. The twofer means business.
So you got to get that pep in your step. It's a long day ahead. It's still only 10 a.m. You need some help along the way.
Yep. As we are going to deal out opening hands and start game number 2 here, we're assuming Hugo took the play. So it looks like we have a hand full of answers and a Spyglass Siren.
Nice full art Spell Pierce as well.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah, that's one of those cards that I'm sure was on Liam's radar at various points in game 1 and could have been pivotal if Hugo had it at the right moment, but had a handful of cut downs and Shudder by Ghost instead.
Yeah, the wrong half of the interaction. It looks like Liam drew a land for turn, changed his plan a little bit, as I do believe that Plains was the one he drew. I think that's what we saw Liam tanking there. As Duress is the pickup, Hugo attacks it, gets Elspeth smited, get out of here. Exiled, notably, like we talked about before. Probably wouldn't Helping Hand that one right away, but you could.
Yeah, that's an interesting card to see. It's obviously somewhat conditional, and you can't ask for too much more from a 1-mana removal spell, but the usual Oculus decks with their Marauding Makos and Fear of Missing Outs and so on, I think have more good targets for it. Hugo doesn't have those so much, but I think maybe Liam on the draw decides, I just need some amount of that stuff, even if I'm not going to be happy to draw into that on turn 5 or 6.
Yeah. And we're going to draw into that. Let's see what else is in hand for Liam, as Duress is going to get cast. And I think it's a whiff, Dom.
Just Meringue River 5 lands and Meringue River Region. Nice.
Yeah. All right. Good news, bad news, Hugo. You discard a card, but also nothing to need to take. As it looks like we're going to put a little thing in there. I imagine it's blue. Also, I imagine with the hand, it doesn't really matter. Destroy Evil.
Yeah, but both players get some nice complaint equity out of that, especially if Liam, draws and casts Stock Up or something on turn 3. So we'll see if the top of Liam's deck is kind of to him here.
Destroy Evil is the pickup.
Yeah, as we said, a great card for Hugo against Liam. Also a great card for Liam against Hugo. It definitely cuts both ways, even though both decks are doing very different things.
Yeah. Hugo might pick up there's some 2-mana spell as Liam started to cast something and stopped and thinks. But also, Hugo just has a spell pierce.
Yeah, notably, mapping onto that Evangel does make it a 3/4, so Destroy Evil does have a target. So Liam will try and fire that off. Hugo gonna spend his spell pierce, take one in the process, and
Yeah,
actually has a pretty beefy evasive threat now, gathering steam.
definitely. As another evangelist comes down, a little surprised not to see Liam go for the upkeep Destroy Evil. There must have been some card like No More Lies we were playing around and instead got by Spell Pierce, as we are going to see a direct get discarded and we play our land. No need for that one. We know Liam's hand over there. Although Meringue is going to potentially, sculpt things here in a second.
Yeah, Meringue has that classic adventure creature style quality to it, where
Mhm.
it technically is a creature for stuff like Spell Pierce, or if you have your own stuff that brings creatures back or finds them. But often, and I think it's what we'll see here, it feels like it's just a classic spell, right? Like, it feels like a memory deluge that Liam has done so well with. So it's kind of a, you know, am I a creature? Who's asking? Right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're duressing me, well, I'm gonna raise an issue on a technicality.
Oh, and Hugo, I think a little bit of a mistap here. Didn't leave up our No More Lies. That means this Meringue's going to get to go. And there's a negate on top of our deck. Now, we do have a lot of pressure on board. So Liam needs to have something now.
Big draw set for Liam here.
A land for the turn, but I didn't see what we got off our draw 3. Looks like at least some more of them were lands. Classic control player stuff as Fountain Port passes the turn. All right, Liam's hand is all counter spells. We,
Yeah, and this time last year, right? You'd think, okay, now I have to think about Wandering Emperor or like Igandro, lots of stuff that can mess you up in combat at instant speed. Now Hugo can just happily send in all these creatures, and the best Liam can do is dig himself to make a fish and hope that gets a block.
So we get a fish made. Oh, I'm forgetting the name of this pro player right now. Dom, help me. I know he has a song.
You might be thinking of Sean McLaren, Sean
Sean.
McLaren, and so you can fill in the rest from there.
Yes, you're correct. Sean McLaren making his appearance. The Meringue River Agent comes down, but Hugo does have No More Lies, and that's going to do it. And now we move on to game number 3. 20 minutes on the clock. A much faster game here. So Hugo curved out with counter magic, and a little bit of flooding there from Liam.
Yeah, and this control deck, it doesn't have great catch-up mechanisms. So you got your sweepers, right? Your split ups and your Day of Judgment, but there's nothing like Sunfall, right? Which used to be this format-defining card where would stabilize you right away and also give you the first threat on board to rebuild with. So even if Liam found the Day of Judgment, the game continues, right? But instead, Liam found nothing, and Hugo had the counterspell, so that was enough to seal it. And Liam giving us a very sultry flash of the eyebrows there to the camera. So
I think
that's an RC winning Smolder right there.
Yeah, I think that was the mental reset. The look up, like, hey, sometimes you draw 10 lands. It happens. It's not the end of the world. I just got to take a second lock in, and my day isn't over. It's round 1. Sometimes it can be hard. You draw a bunch of lands like that, and it feels bad, but you got to push through it. That is part of the game. As we're looking back here at the blue-white control list on your screen, in case you're a blue-white lover, this is what we're playing here with Saddleback Lagak as Liam's name.
A great choice, iconic creature.
Mm-hmm. My pen name on some video games, Dom, is Saddleback Hogak. So
Okay.
if you see Saddleback Hogak, that's me. And Call of Duty or Fortnite or anything like that, that's me. As
A nice
8
crossover episode.
Exactly, yeah. And then this Esper Oculus deck, I gotta say that there kind of showed the power of the classic, obviously Duress didn't super matter because we floated out, but it did show like why, people do play these blue-black mid-rangey decks a lot of just like had some early creatures, had some interaction, and just counted the few spells that do matter, right? And it can be a very potent strategy when it lines up in the right matchup. Says Hugo had a thinker, decides to mold a 6.
Would
Liam,
you describe Oculus as Hogak-esque?
I think so. I think I would. The standard Hogak. What do you think is the most opposite card to Hogak that's a creature?
Oh god, you're putting me on the spot here.
I've never thought of this either. This is let's try and also pick a played creature, not some random badger or whatever. Twitch chat, play along with us as we're bowling to 5 here. No lands. Maybe one Hugo decides not worth the risk here.
And as Hugo shuffles up again, I think the next question on everyone's mind is, what is your favorite badger?
True. And I want actual badger. I don't want Mutavault. I hate when someone's like, "What's your favorite elf in Magic?" and they go, "Mutavault." I love Mutavault.
Yeah, at least pick like a cool changing like Morophon or something. But Mutavault,
Yes.
okay, very very clever. We're all very proud of you. That's
Yeah, pick the little black unblockable creature from MH1 at least, Have a
Changeling
personal-
Outcast, a banger.
Yes, yeah.
Most often seen as a ninja, but as it says right there on the card, it's also everything else.
It's been a dragon a lot for me recently, playing with some Mox Jasper.
Okay.
Yeah. Not good. I'll tell you that one, but it was fun. As we are going to see a Surveil land, leave it on top for Liam. Second land at a card waste here past the turn with a Rest in Peace. Now, we saw Hugo boarded out at least 3 of those helping hands, so this might be a spot where Hugo's ducked and weaved a little bit and got Liam. Evangelist comes on down. We saw that took over the game in game number 1 as we're going to discard a land and pass the turn back to Liam. Another
Rest in Peace. Gonna stop, opponent Oculus being hardcast a few turns from now, but it sounds like that might be all that it's doing if Hugo did hedge against this in sideboarding as you're suggesting.
Yeah, and Liam's gonna get lost immediately here on this Evangelist. Does not want to risk any sort of Kaito or counterspell shenanigans.
Which doesn't feel good, and it's not a 1-for-1 per se. You're leaving those map tokens around against a deck like Oculus. Those are real game pieces, but when Hugo's mulligan to 5, you'll happily, 1 for 1.5 yourself just to keep the board clear.
Liam immediately land go in the element for the control deck. Hugo slam Shieldred. And Liam wanted to cast Ring Revenge for its Omen side. We're going to do that in response here.
Good choice, choice.
I think Hugo's saying, did my Shieldred resolve? Where are we in the turn? A little fun there between players. And we're just going to change the equation and shuffle back into our deck.
Yeah, that's a really interesting card. So in a format with 30-something% Izzet prowess, and then the next most popular deck is mono red, that is a shockingly viable main deck card. I mean, Flash Freeze would be a realistic gamble as a main deck card, but change the equation when everyone else has to kind of play on the same terms and they have to keep their mana curves low, you're against an Esper deck. So the 3 colors that aren't mentioned on change the equation, that card actually still has enough targets, just every 1 and 2 drop to be worth leaving in the deck.
Now, of note here, Liam took some damage to get a bit more information. Decided it's worth it to have that over just finding to get lost off in the upkeep. So Liam did fall to 18, but here comes Kaito, and 3 steps ahead is going to catch it there. And I like the way Hugo played these last couple turns. Tried to protect the Kaito, tried to also give herself a chance to draw a cheap creature to sneak it in, but has to go for it while the shields are as low as they're going to get for a while. As Boonbringer Valkyrie is in hand. Big.
Yeah, we're going to see some nice Baneslayer Angel action. And so Boonbringer Valkyrie is 2023 Baneslayer with lots more bells and whistles, and the backup mechanic, Lauro Dawnbringer, actually in standard for the foreseeable future in Foundations as well. So if you want to double down on that theme and buff all of your other Baneslayer Angels, you could even go to that well as well.
Yeah, I love, and love is a loose term here, when you have the moment of like, am I supposed to split them? Right? Like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, do I play the 1 Lyra so that my Boonbringer gets a bit bigger? Or I just play 2 Boonbringers? Fun little things you get to think about.
Well,
often not the in the world.
We mentioned the array of big creatures that Liam has. So if you have a Beza, let's say, right? Like, you really want to have your Boonbringer Valkyrie back up on the Beza and get a big hit in right away. So that's the kind of best in class if you have other stuff going on.
Yeah. And Hugo plays a Profs to Legend Rule to get a redraw, hits another land, and he's going to get hit by this Boonbringer Valkyrie, knocking us down to 15. And Liam up to, I think, yeah, it looks like 25 here. Destroy Evil. I like this here from Hugo, doing it in the upkeep. That way Liam has to spend his mana on his turn. As Fountain Port is the draw. Meringue River Regent just in hand. Could bounce some map tokens. And he does. I guess there's some interest maybe in bouncing your own Rest in Peace if you had another Meringue and just discarding it to that at this point in the game. Little draw discard action going on here. Gonna discard this island. Pop a map.
Now we'll get exiled along with all the rest in just a second.
Mm-hmm. Like Bitter Triumph on top. Then we drew a card, so our Prof gets another counter here. All right. It's kind of big. There's a Meringue River Regent. Excuse me, I had stock up, my bad. Missed all the card there.
Oh, he'll take that too. No
Yeah.
complaints about that one.
Time to take a little look, Skipoo. Negate Elspeth Smite, some lands, Fountain Port. Split up. Looks like we're taking the negate pretty quick. Sorry, take the Verge. Decides against it. Don't want the double land here. Negate is going to be our second card added there. And a passing of the turn. Hugo down to 9. Does have a kill spell here for the Meringue. We know the negate's in hand. Destroy Evil, another kill spell for the Meringue.
Yeah, it's tough to know what to do with these, right? Because you really need the first kill spell, but then keeping extras, if the first one resolves, you don't want those rotting in your hand while Liam is just activating Fountain Port and doing the control thing. But then if the first one gets countered, you really wish you kept the second one. So tough balance to strike. And Liam is winning this race as it stands with his giant dragon.
Sean McLaren enters the battlefield. As it looks like we're going to Bitter Triumph, discarding a card. In response to the fish. Negate on that. Yeah, we'll tap some mana. Hugo doing a little math here. Does have No More Lies for the negate. And yeah, needs to No More Lies that. We got to go to this dragon. And all right, Hugo's
all these
top
cards
deck.
trade off. A bunch of cards going to exile, but yeah, Liam now untaps with all the mana in the world and Fountain Port, and land not a great draw, but split up going to deal with the big Evangel Synthesis. He'll crack in with the fish.
Activate Fountain Port into turn. We all know Destroy Evil is what Hugo drew. And you're seeing Liam speed it up here. Knows he's a big favorite. Attacking for 2. Draws his own Destroy Evil. Steam Core Scholar. No More Lies, the other card in hand here for Liam. 2 cards drawn from Hugo. Looks like we're going to discard the Destroy Evil. Drew a Disdainful Stroke. Liam's going to make another fish. Liam's going to make a 4th fish. And it's going to untap. Destroy Evil here on the Steam Core Scholar. Hugo getting attacked down to 2.
An actual fish finally entering the fray.
Yeah.
Alongside a whole school of Sean McLarens, or Sean's McLaren, if you prefer.
Yeah. Disdainful Stroke here on the Meringue River Regent. But unless Hugo left in a pest control, this might be game over. Evangelist comes down. We get a redraw. It's all lands and a concession. Congratulations, Liam Hoben, moving on to 1-0 with this blue-white control deck.